In this session, I'm going to use a chronology that my former colleague and great friend, Matthew Jet Hall, created. Matt Hall was head of ITS at Vanderbilt University until a couple of years ago, and he's worked for Bank of America and Microsoft in the past. Thus, he combines firsthand knowledge of business culture with a keen understanding of IT and a love of gaming. Matt and I co-taught a course called Worlds of Wordcraft, Digital Narrative and Virtual Reality for 3 years. He made this chronology in 2010, and I updated it to 2013. I want to draw your attention to several pivotal moments in the history of gaming, which will help us understand the close relationship between video games and the business and technology of computers. Let's begin with the founding of Parker Brothers back in 1883. Parker Brothers was one of the first game companies producing board games in the 19th century. Only a few years later, you would begin to get the influential science fiction of H.G. Wells. And of course, Jules Verne had been publishing even earlier than that. So gaming as an activity in our culture came into an existence side by side with science fiction. By 1909, the TV had been invented, and other critical advances in electronic media, things like the color TV, movies with sound, and early analog computers were all conceived and created before World War II. But it was not until near the end of the war and in the 1950s that the digital computer proper came into being. Note a crucial date, 1954, the year J.R.R. Tolkien published The Fellowship of the Ring. This was the same year as one of IBM's pioneering machines, the IBM 650, went into production. The IBM 650 is sometimes thought of as the world's first mass-produced computer. And it was only a few short years before scientists and engineers were making games for their computers. I think it's remarkable that one of the first things scientists thought to do with this powerful new invention was to play video games. In 1958, Tennis for Two was created, and Space War in 1962. The 1970s and 80s were the great period of arcade games and home gaming machines. Zero in on 1972. Atari is founded, and Al Alcorn creates Pong, and Magnavox demonstrates the Odyssey gaming machine. 1974 saw another important milestone, the commercial launch of Dungeons & Dragons. This was a fantasy role-playing game that did more than anything else to bring Tolkien to the gaming world. And it also laid the conceptual underpinnings for the random role generators that structure combat in most MMOs. Shortly thereafter, you will see Microsoft founded. It, together with Zork and Ultima in 1979, would have enormous influence on MMOs. In the next couple of years, companies like Apple and Radio Shack produced machines for the home market, and the phenomenon of MUDs, multi-user dungeons, which were like vast chat rooms, also would shape the gaming world. The chat rooms that were developed in those early MOOs and MUDs set the precedent for people using MMOs as social realms for talking as well as playing. Improvements in gaming machines and new games followed fast and furious. Two games that would have enormous impact on MMOs were Legend of Zelda and Final Fantasy. The last 2 decades of gaming has been crowded with events, too numerous to discuss in this session. So I want to zero in on a few important moments in these decades. The first moment is the year of 1997, when Ultima Online was created. That's arguably the first MMO, and you still meet many a gamer who will proudly tell you that he got his start playing Ultima Online. And people in my kinship in Lotro date back to friendships made in Ultima Online. The next year, EverQuest brought even greater popularity to the online gaming world. And after that came Dark Ages of Camelot in 2001, and 2 enormously successful science fiction games, Star Wars Galaxies and EVE Online. And at last, the behemoth, World of Warcraft, came out in 2004. World of Warcraft is, of course, the largest MMO. It has something around 12 million active players at present. It dominates the realm of online games. It's a wonderful property. It's rich with imagination, full of narrative. It has an enormous social world, a great crafting world, an economy that is robust and complex. It has everything that one wants in an online game. As I've mentioned before, we're not concentrating on World of Warcraft in this class because it's not as well matched as the Lord of the Rings to the topic of how stories change when they move from an original book to a movie to an online game. But World of Warcraft obviously has more followers than any other game currently on the market. 2007 brought an event of real importance to this class, the launch of Lotro. I can still remember my excitement when the game was announced, and I was in beta. I could hardly wait for it to go live, and founded a kinship on the first day that Lotro came into existence. It's the game we're playing in this class, those of you that are pursuing that route. And MMOs continue to come out at a regular pace. Star Wars: The Old Republic came out in 2011, and Marvel Heroes in 2013. The free-to-play model has given new life to some older properties, and the graphics have developed dramatically. Gameplay continues to grow ever simpler, which continues to attract new audiences to gaming, while frustrating some people that prefer the more complex, older versions of the game. Meanwhile, the rise of the casual gamer has brought millions of more gamers into the activity, and it's attracted whole new demographics: women, more mature players, people that just don't have the time to immerse themselves in the kind of MMOs we're studying. And finally, mobile gaming has taken the casual gaming phenomenon to a new level. I've left out so much in this session. There's so much more to be said about the history of gaming, much more to be explored. There's also the future, and the rest of the history remains to us, the players, to be made.